Welcome back to the third video session on family law. In today's session, we will discuss the modern sources of Hindu law. In the previous session, we had discussed who is a Hindu. It is very important to define who is a Hindu because Hindu law is applicable only to the person who is a Hindu. Then we had discussed in the previous session ancient sources of Hindu laws like Shrutis and Vedas, Smritis and Purans, commentaries and digests, schools of Hindu laws like Mitakshara and Dayabhaga, and customs and usage. In today's video session, we'll see the modern sources of Hindu law. So what are the modern sources of Hindu law? They are judicial decisions, legislations, equity, justice and good conscience, and textbooks. Let's start with the first modern source of Hindu law, that is judicial decisions. Judicial decisions are very important modern source of Hindu law, as judicial decisions have supplemented the pure Hindu law. At the time of Britishers, it was very difficult for Britishers to interpret the Sanskrit text because most of our scriptures, Hindu scriptures, were in Sanskrit, like Shrutis, Smritis, Purans, everything was in Sanskrit, and Britishers were not familiar with Sanskrit language. So they used to take help of Pandits who used to interpret these religious books for the British judges. So this was not a happy situation for them because there was a lot of discrepancies in the interpretation by Pandits. So they always wanted a base for the Hindu law judgments. So far, the Privy Council and High Courts have given so many important judgments on Hindu law that almost all the points of Hindu law are now found in Law Reporter, and that is why we can say that judicial decisions is a major source of Hindu law today. Hindu law as observed today is not the Shastric law, but the laws declared by the courts. It is a judge-made law. As very well said in the case Uddhav Sambho versus Bhaskar Jayakrishnam, the Nagpur court had reiterated the importance of judge-made laws, because they said that the court said in this case, whatever the sages said before thousands of years back in Shrutis and Smritis and Purans, that is not relevant today all the time because they did not say much about the present day situation, or whatever they said was so enigmatic. So there were so much discrepancies between the commentators about the interpretation of what the sages wanted to say. So we cannot rely completely on those scriptures, but whatever we are having as Hindu law today, that is the judge-made law. In another case, Krishna Singh versus Mathura Ahir, the Privy Council had said that clear proof of usage will outweigh the written text of law. Let's see the second modern source of Hindu law, which is very important, that is legislations. In constitutional polity, constitution of the state is sovereign, and authorized group makes and declares rules that are known as legislation. So wherever there is sanction of state, the rules for which there is a sanction of state is the law. There are so many legislations which came forward during this time related to Hindu law. Legislations are considered as the strongest source of law, and that outweighs or prevails over all other sources of law. The legislations began by abrogating the practices which are against the public policy, morality and inhuman. For example, Sati Pratha, which was there, that the custom was there since a long time, but due to Raja Ram Mohan Roy's efforts, and there were many other social reformists, because of whose efforts all these bad customs were stopped, abrogated, and the laws prohibiting such customs passed by the Britishers. Then after, the constitution has abolished discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, birth or sex. The constitution has offered equal protection of law and abolished the practice of untouchability under Article 17. So all these laws, all these articles and constitution provides the change or reformation in the Hindu law system. So whatever the bad things were prevailing at that time in the Hindu society got corrected through the new legislations. There are many new legislations came. Just to name the few important legislations: Hindu Widows Remarriage Act 1856, which is a very old act, which allowed the remarriage of widows, which was not allowed previously. Native Converts Marriage Dissolution Act 1866. If any of the spouse, husband or wife, gets converted in Christianity, and if the other spouse is not ready to accept the husband of wife or wife who is converted, their marriage would be considered as dissolved. That was decided, that was given in Native Converts Marriage Dissolution Act 1866. Then came very important act, that is Indian Succession Act 1925. This act is quite important act as it governs the succession, testamentary succession of Hindus, as well as testamentary and non-testamentary succession of Christians and Parsis, and many rules related to will are given in this act. So this act is still prevalent and very important act. Then another important act came which changed the Hindu society, that is Child Marriage Restraint Act 1929. Child marriages were prevalent in Hindu society. It is even prevalent today also, but to a large extent it has been curbed. Special Marriage Act 1954, which allowed a Hindu to get married with any other religious person. So when a person, when the husband and wife both are from different religion, they can get married through Special Marriage Act. Hindu Marriage Act 1955. This act is very important, which gives the validity of Hindu marriage. So this is one of the very important act, and we are going to discuss in detail in the next video session regarding the validity of marriage under the Hindu Marriage Act. So right now I am not going in much detail of the act. Hindu Succession Act 1956. Again, it is very important act for male and female dying intestate. Hindu male or female dying intestate, that means without making a will, if a Hindu male or female dies, then they are governed under Hindu Succession Act 1956. Another important act was Foreign Marriage Act 1969, which covers the marriages performed outside India by the Hindus. Then the process of legislation is a continuous process. There are so many changes and amendments as per the change in the society. Notable amendments came in 1976, which introduced concept of divorce by mutual consent. So that was a very big amendment in the act. Another important amendment came in 2005 in Hindu Succession Act, which gave equal rights to a daughter in a co-parcenary property. Now the daughters have equal rights just as sons in the co-parcenary property after 2005. It also abolished the old Shastric law, that is the concept of pious obligation of son to pay off the debts of his father. So all these amendments are very important, and that provides a source or a base for the modern Hindu law. Let's move on to the third modern source of Hindu law, that is justice, equity and good conscience. Where Smritis were silent or old texts had conflict, the principles of justice, equity and good conscience to be applied. There are many situations in present day about which the Smritis were silent. So at that time, the judges used to give decision whatever is fair and equitable. So as per the present case, as per the present situation, when nothing is given in the old textbooks, then they have to use their equity and good conscience for. So when in certain cases in the present day situation, when the situation is new and nothing is there in the Smritis about this kind of situation, or the Smritis have conflicting view. At that time, judges used to give decisions on the basis of equity and good conscience, whatever is fair and equitable. So they used to give this kind of judgment, and that became the source of modern Hindu law. If we see the judgment Kenchwa versus Girimallappa, in that particular case, it was decided that the murderer was disqualified from succeeding the property of victim. It was taken from English law, but it is it is based on the equity and good conscience. Somebody who is murdering the other person just to get the property of that person, and then if he succeeds on that property, it is not fair, it is not equitable. Many a times in the history we have seen, for the property, the son murders the father and then he takes the property. So that is not fair and equitable, and that is why it was prohibited in this case, and later on it was adopted in Hindu Succession Act. So basically it is from the English law, but it is it is based on the equity and good conscience. Let's move on to the next source, that is textbook. Whether textbook can be considered as actual source of Hindu law or not, that is a question mark. So textbooks are not considered as a source of law. Though textbooks are written by scholars, but they do not possess any authority or constitutional competence to make laws. So in today's session we have seen the modern sources of Hindu law. They are legislation, judicial decisions, equity, justice and good conscience, and textbooks. In the next session we'll see the sources of Muslim law. Thank you so much for the patient hearing.